Okay, let's get started. I'm recording again today. It worked last time, so I'm pretty excited. Did anybody go and revisit that at all? So it's posted on Moodle. It's really long. It'd probably be best if I could chunk this out a little bit, but it's tough because I'm recording a classroom lecture. Today we won't have near as much computer activities as far as, you know, me doing something here and then you doing the same thing. So you're going to be working on your own projects here in just a little bit. It won't be as long of a recording if anybody happens to be going back. So open up, my screen will be on here in just a minute. If you could open up what we worked on last time, and I believe you stored it in a Chapter 2 folder called Chapter 2 Practice, something like that. And we'll just finish up what we stopped with the other day. I think we got pretty much through the text, so just as a reminder, again, I've got my screen coming here in a minute. Oh, okay.
You know,
do you have information on the book?
Yeah, you can get the e-book from the library, but it's online, so you can get it, you can access it from home. So it's in the same e-book. That's the only way I look.
So were they?
But that's what I just started yesterday. It worked really good. I was on it.
Okay. And were you doing the e-text version or a physical book version?
E-text.
E-text. Okay. Yeah, you should be able to.
It's free.
Hello.
But I get it from the library.
Yeah, I mean, like, you don't physically own it, but I think you could print it, and then you can access it any time.
And I do have the first few pages, kind of the main pages on Moodle, if that helps too. Again, I can't really do the whole book, haven't done the whole book, but I've got quite a bit out there. Yeah, and then my lectures, hopefully recording, you know, for going back if you need to. Yeah. Okay, just a little bit of review. Remember, any new document, file, new document, it's remembering what you had prior, so there's a couple of customs here. With the default being 8.5 by 11, remember there's 6 picas per inch, so that's where we get our 51p0 widthwise, and then horizontally 66p0. We set our last document up for tall orientation. We unchecked facing pages. Remember, that would be like a book, facing pages if you need them. We didn't worry about page numbering at this point. We have one column. We did adjust the margin slightly. And remember, we had to unlink the chain in order to change the margins from being equal all the way around. And I've got top, bottom, left, or top, left, right of 3p0, which is 1/2 inch, and then 6p0 is 1 inch. So anyway, I'll close that. We typed text using the type tool, your T tool. Remember, we placed text using the manual placement method, the semi-automatic and the fully automatic placement methods. Why don't we do file open, by the way? Why do we do file place? Any idea on that? So click file open on your computers, and what are your options? So if you look at file types, and it probably doesn't give you a whole lot of file types when you click the drop down, or even if you're within your Chapter 2 folder. So when you file open, I can get InDesign version 3, InDesign markup. QuarkPress is the old one. That's the old version of InDesign, way a long time ago. InDesign book, and then I can get Adobe PDF creation file settings. So I can't get Microsoft Word, Excel, images. Does that make sense? So file open is looking for files particular to this program, so they're all going to have the .indd option for the most part, whereas file place, so if we go that route, and we look at the different types of files, so already you can see a difference here. We don't have a whole lot going on within our folder here, but the different types of files that we can import or place is much larger. So that's why, again, place is that collection. InDesign is a place to collect files that you need for your publication. All right, so I'll cancel that. We placed this document. It's a multiple page document, ended up being 4 pages. Remember that every frame has a fill and a stroke, and the first frame we typed our first and last name, inserted our middle name, we filled it with a color, we have a stroke designated around the outside, we changed the size of the stroke with the type, so the long bike article that we used for placement. Again, a little bit about what we learned here. I've got an open, so my import is open, meaning that that's the beginning of the article. My outport tells me that it's threaded to another, somewhere else within the document. And my next column here, if I click that, there's my import, tells me there's linked text. And again, on the output, linked text. I can maneuver the little window shades however I want. And remember, the text doesn't disappear, does not go away. If you were not here, oh, and by the way, so this example on the bottom of column 1, there's widows and orphans. Widows left behind, orphans starting life without. So I have one lone line there with the remaining paragraph on the other column. So that's just not good format. It's more challenging for a reader, can be confusing, so it's better to bring the window shade up if you have something like that and let it wrap around. The other thing we did with a little bit of type, I'm sure all of you understand the format, character format, as far as I can change it from one typeface to another. I've got different varieties of typeface. Papyrus does not have anything else than regular. Remember, the other Minion Pro and Times had multiple options for us: bold, condensed bold, italic, regular, we also practiced a little bit with changing the leading, and we used, in this particular example, we used negative leading, and it doesn't look very good. It makes it difficult to read. It may be used in an attempt to make something fit. And you don't want to make something fit that is really difficult to read, so that's not very successful. The next paragraph, I think, looks a little bit better. So I used 15-point leading with 12-point font, so it's just a hair more than the 20% default. Remember, 20% is the default, and it just stretches it out just a little bit is all. So that's kind of what we went over last time. An example of successful negative leading. So go ahead and click, and what I'll do, if you were here or not here Tuesday, so for this first assignment, I'm going to give credit for whether you were here Tuesday or whether you were here today. So if you weren't here Tuesday, please go to your type tool and click and drag a box, type your first name, middle name, last name, okay? And I just want us to, get some practice with stuff. So if you were here Tuesday, you've got probably this document you can open up. All right, so if I click in my top text box and I've got, right before my last name, and if I press enter key, it may or may not fit inside that box. In my case, it barely fits inside the box. If I were to squish my box, close my window shade up a little bit, remember, I get my output that says, there's more text in there, you're going to have an error. So you need to make sure that if you have to size your box a little bit larger in order to display your type, please do that. Okay, as far as letting, the space between my first middle name and my last name appears big to me. Does it appear big to you, like overly large? A little bit overly large, okay? And but it's using, if we look at this, it's using 20% default letting. So again, just because the defaults are set at 20% doesn't mean they're right. So it depends on the size of type, the document, where it's going to be displayed, who's reading it, all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and change the letting. And again, I can highlight that. There's multiple ways to do that, but one of the easiest is go ahead and highlight your first, middle, and your last name. And then we'll go to that letting. Remember that when it's in parenthesis, that's an indication to you that that's the default 20%. Again, it's 20%, doesn't make it right, but that's the default. Okay, so I can work with negative letting. If 57 or so was the default, so 60 would be a little bit larger. But what if I went to 48? And again, I don't have to live with 48, but I can test it and see what that looks like. And I'm not so sure that, my Y for my name, my Y and my L are really close there. So do I want to actually offset it with a space bar just a little bit? Again, that's a visual eye thing. If you think it looks okay, maybe I want to try a different font. Maybe that font maybe isn't the best for my particular name. So again, it depends on your type. So I think that letting probably looks better. There's some other things that you can do that are kind of fun. So if you really make it small, so they conflict, really. They're one on top. In fact, I'm going to get rid of that extra space. So those really kind of do conflict. In fact, I could make it even smaller. Maybe I'd go to 24. So that's really negative letting. And sometimes that can create tension. So if you've got a piece that the topic is controversial, somewhat tense, something going on in the community, you might actually want to create something that has a little bit of tension in the headline. And the other thing that you can do to add some interest, maybe you can highlight your last name. And remember on our type color, so instead of it being solid black, my first and middle name are solid black. Maybe what I want to do, and again, I'm on the A character, which is my character palette. So I can find in the middle, there's a T that's the fill of the T. So that's my fill of the type. And I can modify that. So if I'm just looking at black and white, what I can do is tint. So I'm using my black, and I'm just going to tint it. So I could go down to, 30%, 40% and test it, see what it looks like. But maybe I'll try 40% tint. And you can just click that off, or, click the other one off, click off of it yourself. See if you like it. And maybe now I don't really like that yellow fill at all. So I may choose to go back in here, and I'm seeing my yellow fill, and maybe I just want to go none. I really don't like that fill maybe. Okay. So you can change all sorts of things. Again, I could, click in here. Maybe I do want to offset it a little bit, and maybe I just want to type, and type space bar to get it to where I think it might look okay. There's multiple other things that you can do, but maybe you want a little bit more, it's an offset placement, and it's your eye that's controlling what it looks like. Okay, so that's an example of negative letting that I think can work. So our first example, before, when we just did the enter key at 20%, it seems like maybe that was a bit big. So the space in between seemed maybe an inefficient use of time, and in fact, or space, and maybe a little bit too large. So we changed the letting. First thing we did was at 48, and again, you can type in 46 if you really want 46.
Mine's not letting any, it won't overlap with words. It will only change the space above the words.
Did you highlight both of them?
Yeah.
Okay, and you've got a straight enter key after, okay, so click after shade. And had you done anything?
I just did it there, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so you start with, oh, it looks like it's. Yeah. Still isn't showing. So then click after shade. Okay, and then press enter. Wow. Huh. You might want to control C that, just copy it. Okay, and then let's just get rid of that whole box. So with the control and on that box. Okay, and then go back to your table. Just click the other box. And paste. Okay, now it's doing it. I don't know why it wasn't doing it before, but sometimes, you know, programs, and it's not just Adobe or Microsoft or any program you're working in, but sometimes there's an error. It tends to remember whatever error it is. And if you just delete what you were working on and paste it back in, start a new document, file place again, you can usually get it to work. Okay. To place that information, so it was long bike article, and again that was found on Moodle, and you can copy and paste that into your chapter 2 folder, and then within InDesign you just do a file place, find the long bike article, open it, and you can click, and then at least it'll place it on that first page, which is enough. So we're just kind of getting practice. Okay, so on my, so the textbook, just to kind of cover that. So we've added stroke and fill to the text frame. So that was what we did here. We practiced with changing the stroke to something different. We added the yellow with a tint on Thursday. And then today we decided maybe we don't like the yellow, so we removed it. And again, that was just, you know, using your controls there. There's other methods to do that, but through the controls. If we go, so just another demonstration I think that would be good. So if you did the file place, again for the long, you don't need to do this again, but for the long bike article, and cancel that. So if you have a whole page or even just a single column, I'd like us to work with, you know, either one that you have. So I have a single column here. If we were to put a stroke around this single column, so with your black pointer tool, click on the left column that began the article. Okay, and currently, so there's different styles of stroke. Let's just use solid because that's, you know, kind of plain and simple, but solid, and 0 is the default. In other words, it's no stroke at all around a frame. So let's even use something small, you know, 1 point. And then remember to look at it. So it's kind of tough to see because of the frames and such. What does this really look like? So we need to go to our preview. And again, if I have this tool palette in one column or 2 columns, you'll still see the palette, but I like to work with 2 columns. And again, preview is just the top one there, preview. And you have to click off the box that you're currently on in order to see what that looks like. Okay, is that attractive with that stroke, in your opinion? Semi, okay, looks okay. What, if there is anything wrong with it, what in your opinion is a little bit wrong with it? A little bit hard to read,
Text is like right up against the line.
Yeah, so some of the characters are actually kind of button up against that line. That's difficult to read. So that makes it challenging for your viewer. So I think we can fix that. Okay, so let's go ahead, and you can work either in your preview mode or back to normal. It doesn't really matter which one. But let's go ahead and click back on that box. Okay, and remember on Tuesday, we were in object text frame options. Remember, we wanted to center the content within that box, our name vertically. We did the left and right center. That was pretty easy to do. That's just a paragraph format deal. But in object text frame options, go ahead and click on that. And move your box out of the way so that it's not covering that column there. Okay, so inset spacing, we worked a little bit with that on Thursday. We ultimately, to center our name within that top box, ultimately we chose a vertical justify center, but I think I introduced you just a little bit to the inset spacing. So I probably would want to look at all around. So I probably want to link my settings. I think at the top it's a little bit much. At the left it certainly is. On the right, because I've got unequal line endings, some of it looks great, some of it doesn't look so great. And I bet you as I change my insets, it's going to change where my bottom margin or bottom margin paragraph ending will be. So let's link them all. And again, I think this is an eyeball thing. My preview is on. Please be sure that your preview is still checked. That's that lower left. Okay. And then just start clicking, doesn't matter which one, I'm just starting my top. If I click, so I'm at 0P2, 0P3, and again, you can say okay, go to your preview and see if you think that's enough. I personally would probably do a little bit more. It's a little bit, but it's really not enough. That's kind of that principle of contrast. Don't do something just a tiny. So if you're gonna do it, make sure that it's enough to be different. So I'll need to click back on the box again, object text frame options, and I'm just going to increase it. And again, maybe I might want to land at 0P6, something like that. Okay to that. That does change my ending. I may like where that's at. I'm going to go back to my regular, view. And I can bring that down all the way, but that doesn't help me. I still have that one little line. So I'm probably going to have to bring that up. I think I'm probably going to want 2 or 3, maybe 3 set together. And I think that looks the best for me. Again, and I may not want to actually manipulate that until I'm finally done with the entire article, but you do need to pay attention to your endings of paragraphs and line numbers left or beginning. Okay, so that is adding, and that's actually the next over here. I'll go back to my hover cam. Okay, so this is frame options to add inset spacing. So that is, try to focus it a little bit better there. Autofocus. Okay. There's also an option. So if I go, whoops, back there. Sometimes with images especially, if you need to set different spacing between your edges, again, you can unlock, but sometimes you have weird little, let's see, if the image, you have an image and you're trying to change the wrap and strange things are occurring with that image and the wrap, you can ignore the text wrap. So we don't have an image in here that we're wrapping text around. And you can wrap images. So you can wrap text fairly closely. You can make text go to the image, jump over the image. If it's a strange shaped image, say a star, I can make text go in that star shape, like up to the image, which may or may not be easy to read. But sometimes with text wrap, and I'm going to go ahead and cancel that, if you've got text wrap problems, you may have to go back into that object text frame options and ignore it. So we don't run into that very often, but that was a note in my text. Anyway, with the hover cam here, so this is just an example within the book. They've created something sort of kind of like what we did. We created a border around the box itself. We've got type within the box. And to make it look a little better, we offset it, inset, away from those edges. Okay. Rotating text frames, so I'll go back in design again. I don't know that it would be to our benefit to rotate this text frame. I guess maybe the top one we could kind of do something crazy with to rotate it, but rotating is just simply like Microsoft Word. You know how you go to a corner edge and you get kind of a curly arrow? That's exactly the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to Control Z undoes. And also, so there's multiple undos, but you can use edit if you want to, but you'll see that Control Z. So a lot of those same window options, window commands, same thing here, if you're used to them. Okay, and resizing the text frame. So I'm going to go ahead and make that smaller. I still need to show my name, so make yours as small as you can get it and still display your name. So with your black pointer tool, click on an edge, a sizing handle, and skinny it down about as small as you can. Then, and this may or may not look very good, but with your keyboard, Shift and Control held down together, so you have to hold them both at the same time, go to a corner sizing handle, and you'll get the double-headed arrow. So Shift, Control, click, pull out, release your mouse first, and then release your keyboard.
I can't resize. So do a file save. You already have it saved. Just click outside of it. Click on it again. I wonder if there is a box. The same thing with this one. I don't know why that's not working. There's something that's stuck there. So hold down your Shift Control, and then pull out on that corner handle, and the type should go. Yeah, kind of crazy large.
So it's a quick way to make your type large. I think sometimes it has a good application, but in this case, probably not. But you can leave it as is. So I think we'll type, okay, so let's do some glyphs also. Go to your T tool. We'll save some of the direct selection tool in just a second. So if you go to your T tool and you go to type and then you go to glyphs, everybody see that? So there's all sorts of, and I don't, oh, I think I have to have a box drawn here. Go to your T tool, and I think Minion Pro is fine for right now. I think we need to have a box probably drawn first. So you may have to cancel that whole thing. Go down to where you have a little bit of space and click and drag. So I've got a tiny bit of space at the bottom of my left side of the column. So click and drag in there. We have our type tool ready to go. Then go to type and then glyphs. And it should give you the Minion Pro character set. And in this case, it's showing us our entire font. I can look at just currency. I can look at symbols for this font. And again, you can scroll down and see what all the symbols are. There's also ornaments. So those are characters in the Minion Pro set that are kind of ornamental in nature. And there's, some fun ones there. There's also, we should find wingdings and webdings. So if you go to it's kind of backwards, it seems to me. Show is at the top. The font that you're selecting is at the bottom. Okay. So if I want to change from Minion Pro to something else, then you can click on it, go down to the W's, and there's some wingdings, webdings, but wingdings, maybe, so I don't know if there's a bike here. There doesn't appear to be a bike, but maybe we have something that looks like a sunball. I don't know, maybe that's a sunball. So I might want to use that particular wingding. So I can double click that and you should see it show up in your box, but probably fairly small because it's 12 points. Okay, so I can then highlight that small little wingding and I can make it 24 points. I can make it 36 points, 60 points. And have to keep highlighting it. If I can get to it. It does not seem to want to change for me. This may be an instance where I have to use my, okay, so if it's not changing, it should change easily. Usually when you highlight it, go to your point size and adjust that, it should change. But remember what we just did? So you can also make a wingding or a symbol quite large with Shift Control, drag on a corner, make it big. And that still is not very big. So I may even make that larger. Again, Shift Control, just pull it out. So it's really huge. And that it's blocking my type right now. So maybe I want that to be a really, really light tint, and I'm going to put it behind something. Or maybe I want to put it at the top. So I can highlight my black symbol, whatever it is you chose. And then again, it's a type color of black that I'm using here. And I may want to go just to a really light, like 10%. And I can just use, tint slider. And then you have that, and then you can pick it up and move it around. So I can do that again so I'll add another one. Okay, so I'm first going to start with my T tool. I'm going to click and drag a small box. My cursor is waiting for me. Okay, and I want to go to type and then glyphs. And I may want to stay in Minion Pro. This time I'll find a different one. I don't need to see the entire font. I want to see just the ornaments. So I'm going to go there, way down almost to the bottom there, ornaments. And I may like the little pepper looking one. Double click to get that onto my screen. You can close glyphs. It remembers the recently used, like the last 10 or so. And I'll close that. So we can highlight that and change it, say, to 72 points, which this one, for some reason, I'm not sure why it's not highlighting and changing. It should. The other thing we know we can do is with our Shift Control key, held down at the same time, make it really huge. Our box doesn't have to be that huge. And then if I want to change it from black to a tint of that color, I need to highlight it again with my text tool. Click and drag over it so that it's highlighted. And I want to go to my type fill. And there is a fill and a stroke for type, so be sure that the fill is forward. I don't know if you saw the two boxes here. The fill was default forward, but it's possible you could have clicked something too. So I'm at my type fill with the T there, and I'm going to adjust that. I can either type in 10% or just go to 10%. Enter key, close the box. So I've got another little guy there, but it's covering my type, right? I don't want it to cover my type. Is yours covering your type? Maybe this one, and you can make something actually go off your page. That's okay to do that. It won't print off the page, but you can. Okay, so this is covering part of my name. Not a good thing. So I can change the order, you know, the order arrangement. Do you see that in lots of other programs? If I go to Object, land on Arrange, I can see Bring to Front or Send to Back. And I'm on the glyph, so I need to send that one to the back. So it depends on what you're on. If I'm on the type, I probably want to bring my type forward. In this case, I want to send this glyph all the way to the back. If I layered this, so remember when we typed our name, we created a box. So we created our name. It had no fill and no stroke at the beginning. So the stroke here that we added, that 5 points, is a part of this box. So if I wanted this to be arranged differently, so in other words, if I want my box to hide behind my glyph, I would have to have a separate box. Does that make sense? So the glyph would be the, let's see, the stroke box would be the furthest behind, my glyph would be in the middle, my type would be in front. But because I've not separated this point stroke from my type box, I can't do that. But there's all sorts of fun things you can do within design, layering things. Okay, same thing with the one at the bottom. My little pepper looking thing is in the front, so I'm going to go to Object, Arrange, and I'm going to send that to the back. And again, I can rotate it. Remember the rotating. If you can't get a hold of it, you might have to click at the bottom, but you know, I can rotate it around and pick it up, move it a little bit so that maybe it's a little more visible. Again, you can turn off all of your boxes and such to see what it looks like. That top looks horrible. I do agree with that. It's overstriking type. That's not a good thing. We would need to either move our type down or, you know, do something. So is yours still overstriking? Yeah. Okay. And we can take care of that by picking up the window shade, move it down. Second one, have to do the same thing. Pick that up and move it down. Okay, and I know we've got a lot of haphazard stuff going on there because we're learning functions. Okay, so do a file save with where you're at now. So I have a name already, so if I just do file save, it's replacing chapter 2. If this is the first time for you creating chapter 2, you'll have to go to file save as by default. So we did the glyphs, and that's really as far as setup for creating your own document here. That's about where we're going to go. And let's see. So on Moodle, the other thing we did too, or I added, was the non-designers design book, chapter 2, proximity. So I'd like to cover that really quick, and then I'll talk about the assignment that we'll do. I'll go back to my hover cam here. So proximity implies relationships, And actually, maybe I'll remove this other book. That's probably kind of in the way.
I'm sorry, can you repeat what you wanted to tell them?
Oh, chapter 2 practice. Yeah, something you remember, but chapter 2 practice would be fine. And I'll try to be relatively quick on proximity. Just kind of give you some examples there. So in this case, so proximity implies relationship. So again, text describing an image. Text that belongs with one another in that it describes, you know, a paragraph or something. It needs to be physically close to the other. So this is a pretty easy one there. It's an implied relationship because they're close. In fact, they're even holding hands. When you look at, so we'll just do a quick look at this business card here. Let's see if it's going to focus in for me. Okay. With those business cards, so just the one on there's actually two on the left side. So you probably notice that sock and buskin is really big, and that's where your eye goes first. But then do you find yourself going to the corners and it's, do I contact Ambrosia? Oh, there's the telephone number. I wonder where that person lives. So it's just not really, it's kind of like it's this mess of non-organization. The next one here, well, I can tell it's Ambrosia that I need to contact. The one here gets better, again at the top, so my eye goes to the top and it's large, sock and buskin. Ambrosia is who I contact. The address is all, you know, grouped together, so that's better. Here, so a good example of use of bullets, and I see this a lot. It's kind of hard to tell right here. Do those bullets go with this side on the left, or do those bullets go with the right side? So because there's not, again, it's kind of that contrast, it's proximity, but there's no way to tell which one they really go with. So this is much clearer and cleaner. Squish up, and you can do this in Microsoft Word, I mean really any program. So whenever you have bullets, make sure that they're squished up close enough to the content that describes the bullet. At the bottom, so travel tips. This one again, so it may be clear that there's 3 travel tips here, but is 1, 2, 3, it's not even entirely clear if 1 goes with take your money or twice as much money, 2, whatever, 3, whereas the next one, because it's so much closer, it's really clear that there's 1, 2, and 3. So it's a relationship, better describer of relationships. This one here, so, and this is kind of a common a lot of times when I have students create letterhead, for example. They think everything has to be balanced. So like your first assignment, okay, I'm going to create letterhead for my new company that I've just formed. And for some reason they want to, whatever their logo is, they want 2. They want 1 on the left and 1 on the right. And I think it's because it's balanced. I think that's, you know, the default. But there is no reason to have 2 logos. So you'd want to probably have 1. The positive here is that Sally's Psychic Services is pretty big. She's probably got most of the contact information that I really need, but it's hard to know what to read first and what's important, and it kind of gets lost. In fact, I might even gloss over it and maybe go to Betty's Psychic Services, because Betty did a better job with design. It gets a little bit better here. We've got Sally's large, got some grouping going on. Phone number is bold, so that's good. This one, so the First Friday Club here at the top, again, kind of the same type of problem here. You can't even really tell what's going on. What are they even trying to communicate on that left side? So it's First Friday Club and winter reading schedule. You know, it's important Friday, November 1, 5 o'clock. But I can't even hardly read that, but Cymbeline, so that's apparently the first reading. And then, gosh, I can't even really tell what the other readings are. Whereas this one clearly lays out that's reading 1, 2, 3, and describes it. It's a little bit small. That might be a little bit of a problem depending upon, again, who your audience is and what, you know, size piece that was printed on. Next quick one over here. So here's a bunch of flowers there. You can clearly tell it's the same, you know, kind of scripty font. Sometimes scripty fonts work okay, sometimes they don't. But if you really love this scripty font and you had to group related flowers, so these may be, you know, for a marriage, for example. These come with package 1, these come with package 2, or whatever else your description was. But you can tell that they're different, okay? At least grouped differently. More about proximity. So this is a really good example of type. So this is the typical Microsoft Word thing, right? Enter key, type, enter key, type, enter key, type. And I bolded it, so I did that. But can I tell what goes with what? Really, I can't. Sometimes it's not super clear. You can assume it, but it's not super clear. There's other things I could do. I could put a line in between there, and then maybe that would, you know, communicate these blocks are together. But the cleanest way is to go ahead and add space in between, and that's not a full enter key. That's the other thing with Microsoft Word you see is there's, you know, one enter key turns into kind of a large amount of space. And then she slightly, I don't know if you can really tell that, especially because the page is rounded a little bit, but she slightly decreased leading. Remember our practice today we did negative leading and then added leading. So she not only added paragraph spacing after, and we'll get a lot of practice with that, but decreased slightly leading so that it really does communicate it's together. This one is a little bit similar to really that business card where everything's kind of on those outer edges and doesn't communicate very well. If you really love, you know, the Moonstone Dreamcatchers, I think that font is really great. There's a slight difference in overlap there. This goes slightly off the page, which I think is fine. The non-grouping is very difficult. So I think it's best, you know, made by hand with love, Moonstone Catchers, so volume 2, you know, whatever the descriptive information is. And it's really hard to tell there, but it's in a shade, really light shade of that blue. It's hard to tell even again that that's blue, but it's okay to use like a tint of a color that you're using for printing. Don't have to use black and white all the time. And I can get both of these on the same screen there. So Shakespeare, I mean, this clearly communicates it's Shakespeare, and you know, that's not too bad there. You got some dots, so that goes clearly. It's leading you on. So there is some indication visually of leading you on to the next piece of information. This is grouped better, same format really, but closer together. Again, it's proximity. And the bold helps. I think the alignment is a little cleaner to read. Center align is difficult to read, I think. It's good for maybe bigger headings, some things like that, but it can be difficult to read. So this, I think, works, especially for this size piece. I think the left align is better. This next one is kind of a mess, so I don't know how anybody could place an order on that. But Gertrude's piano bar, and she's got some salads and entrees and such. It's hard to even know what goes with what, and the cucumbers and cheese, and I guess that's all one thing there. It's just tough. All caps is really difficult to read. So again, recommendation not to use all caps. So you can see that this is much better formatted. So you've got maybe a classier, goes with piano bar, so that the typeface itself works better. It identifies your starters and your entrees. The dollar value, so it's bolded and right next to the name, so it's pretty clear that for $8, I can get the onion loaf. The type, as far as the descriptive type, is again in proximity, very close as to the name of the item, so the title of the item. A little more separation between, so if my starters, there's a little greater space between the groupings. So that helps again to distinguish that I'm done with starters, now we're going on to entrees. And it gets even better. So on the left here, and actually I can put both of them out, that's probably easy. I think that the indent, so I've got starters and then I indent my starters, that's even more clear. Still got a slight increase in space between the two, so that didn't change. Maybe a little bit larger as far as the bold and the size here. So a little bit less, there's an indent, but a little bit less of an indent. Instead of it being the kind of maroon color or whatever that is, they decided to change that into a light gray. That can work in a pretty well lit restaurant. Do you ever find yourself going to a restaurant looking at a menu and it's pretty dim, and then you've got really light typeface and you can see maybe the name of the dish pretty well, but to try to read the ingredients can be really difficult. And if somebody has allergies, dietary restrictions, some things like that, and it's difficult for them to read the menu, it may take more time with servers because you probably have to ask the server in a little bit more detail what it is that incorporates and includes. And they moved the, these are a little bit further out there. All right. Summary of proximity. So let's see, I'll start at the top there if we can get to read that. Okay, so if they're in close proximity, they become one visual unit rather than a bunch of separate units. It identifies where you should begin to look, the path that your eye should follow, where should my eye go, and then where should I end up. So there's kind of a beginning and an end that's defined. It's to help you be organized or have an organized piece. It's most likely to be remembered when the piece is organized, and the white space helps in design. So placing that extra space in between and grouping things in close proximity increases organization. And how to get it, so you can try squinting your eyes slightly and count the number of visual elements on the page by counting the number of times your eye stops. If there's more than 3 to 5 items on a page, and it depends on the piece, as she's saying, see which of the separate elements can be grouped together into closer proximity to become one visual unit. What to avoid? Too many separate elements on a page. Avoid leaving equal amounts of space between elements unless each group is part of a related subset. Avoid even a split second of confusion over whether a headline, subhead, caption, graphic, or the like belongs with its related material. Create that relationship along with elements using proximity. Don't create relationships with elements that don't belong together. If they're related or unrelated, you want to move them apart. And then don't stick things in the corners just because you need to fill empty space. Okay, so let's go back to InDesign. Be sure that, again, you've saved this, if not. And on Moodle, so again, I'm giving points even if you have a little bit done. So I know some of you weren't here Tuesday, you're here today. Some of you are not here today that were here Tuesday. So anyway, I believe I set this for upload. Could somebody check that out? So if you go into Moodle and then go ahead and click on your Chapter 2 threaded text frames, and you'll be awarded 5 points for submitting your document today. Okay, so go ahead and click that, and then you'll have to browse to, so does it give you that option? Browse to your, yeah, okay. I thought I probably set it up that way, but I think everything is set up that way. Sometimes that first assignment, I just do an in-class tally. But so go ahead and do that, upload that file. That should be good. Alrighty, and then I've got instructions. I'll go to my hover cam as well, but I've got instructions for our assignment. And if you happen to miss that, so it's non-designers text, page 38. There's just a little image that I created, and the instructions are included there, but I'll also go back to my text here in just a minute. So this is your assignment. And we'll all get it set up together just to kind of get started on the right track. Oops, here we go. Okay, so back to this, and it's probably a little bit bigger here. So you can actually compare and contrast two different things, but you can either borrow the type from here and type it. You can go on to Wikipedia, copy and paste it and move it in here. So it's not the type that I'm worried about, it's that you're practicing with the pieces and parts of the software and with design. So we're going to do a half letter, and we'll set our margins here in just a minute, and we'll create our columns. So a couple of things I'd like you to notice, and she really has some good detail here as far as what the assignment expectations are. You can cut the headline and text. You might have to type it, okay? But remember how we made quite large type, and you can use the shift control potentially and pull it out, but my guess is with this and the box size, it's probably going to work better if you use a font style of your choice that's readable, so I'm going to let you pick. But I just highlight it and make it quite large, and it should spread pretty much edge to edge. Okay, so I am looking for a large headline. On the left, so a very short little area, you're going to talk about photography. Okay, again, you can go on Wikipedia, highlight a paragraph, copy and paste it in here. Okay, photography heading should be bolded and slightly bigger, so I'd make it larger in contrast enough that it's large enough. In design, so remember that we by default had, with the long bike article, we looked at spacing before settings. Okay, so you can choose to use spacing before or spacing after. Whoops, that would be this one right there, spacing after. But when you're typing or when you copy paste information in, you want one enter key between your paragraphs. And let's see. So you can see that there's only, and where's my little, I guess we turned it on in Word. Let's see, type. If you go to type, and it kind of looks like a mess when you look at it, but go to type, and way at the bottom you'll see show hidden characters. And we may need to go into the regular view to see the hidden characters. But in between every single, and maybe if I make it really big, you can see it. In between every single word, you're going to see a space. So that little dot in the middle is one space. And you'll notice at the end of, let's see if we can find the end of a, here's the end right here. So first paragraph, bicycle. So only if we did it by bicycle. See how there's only one space at the end of that punctuation? So that's common in publishing. So to conserve space, basically. So it's not the old, remember Microsoft Word and you type a business letter and oftentimes you would do space, space. Some of you might have learned a long time ago. So in publishing, it's one space. And that's kind of changed with, I think, Microsoft Word defaults now. It's probably one space. But see how there's, so the P tag is, or P paragraph symbol is just one. There's not two of them. There's not one here and one in the middle. So that's just one enter key between your paragraphs. And again, the spacing before, so the spacing before, sorry, Charlie, in my case, I set it at 0p8, okay? If I want to use spacing after instead of spacing before, so it can work in the same manner. So if I choose those and maybe I get rid of that one, so I'll just show you the difference there. And I change this one to 0p8, so it can kind of do the same thing except that I've taken away the spacing before, sorry Charlie. But either way, if you're most comfortable using spacing before, that's fine. If you're most comfortable using spacing after, that's fine. But you'll notice on the assignment, I'm going to my hovercam here, and let's see if I can zoom in here. Okay, see how the spacing between paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 to paragraph 3 is larger? That's not a double space, that's not enter key. So that's manipulating your spacing after or spacing before. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, no indents, no tab keys for your, before a paragraph. So it's all blocked at the left, that's okay. The other thing to notice, let's see, there's the text aligns. I don't know if you can see that very well there, but remember in InDesign how we drug a ruler guide down? So to get text across columns to be placed at the same place, I want to click and hold and drag a ruler line down. And I didn't do a very good job here. In fact, it's different type styles. That doesn't help me at all. But column to column, those don't align. Okay? And to get those to align, I may have to pick it up and move the box down. I mean, that looks horrible there, but if the most important thing, and I can use my arrow key down just a tiny bit. I may have to even arrow key down just a tiny bit more. It looks like this doesn't help that it's different typefaces, so it's not going to look great. But you can arrow key up, down, left, right, slightly to move things around. Okay. So I would click and drag yourself a little rule so that photography and holography align horizontally across. This is a box that's filled with black. So in InDesign, remember how this top box, we filled it with yellow? So we're going to fill it with black, and then I'm going to go to my T tool, and I'm going to change my T tool, so the color, my fill, I can change to paper. So that's not very helpful because it goes away, but if I go to my fill and I go back to that yellow, now I can see the type there. So it's a reverse text box is the name of that. And again, the type is just from online somewhere. Do a little bit of practice with changing the color. You may choose a blue color. She chose red or kind of maroonish. These are glyphs. Remember the type and then the glyphs. I don't know that you'll find these glyphs. I don't think you'll find the duck because that's from Zapfino and I don't think we have it. But these glyphs are made smaller. Remember the shift control, making them bigger on the corner, making them bigger, smaller. And then remember how we highlighted those glyphs and we changed the tint to say 10%, 15%, whatever. And then just picking them up, moving them around. This one actually has an overlap issue. So remember how we had to go to Object Arrange and then move that glyph to the back. Okay. And then some other little glyph here. This one looks like it's 100% black. And then these are just periods. You can draw a line. There's actually a line tool. So there's numerous ways to create a line, but I could go to my plain old line tool that's right there, and I could make my lines dotted. Or I can type dots and make them huge. So various ways that you can do that. It's probably more efficient to draw a line and then make them dotted. So anyway, that is your assignment. So to get it set up, let's go ahead and I'm going to go to View. So to change your view up or down, I can go to View, Zoom in, or Zoom out. You'll also see that there's a Control plus, and then I think a Control, usually it's a Control minus to zoom, or Control plus to zoom in, a Control minus to zoom out. I can fit it on the window or make it so actual size is 100%, but there's all sorts of view options. Entire pasteboard, so I can see everything that I might have put out there. Remember, it's a collection area that I can use to bring stuff in. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and save what I've done here. And we don't need to keep this document open. If you want to, you sure can, but don't need to. So I'm going to close that document. And I'm going to go to File, New, Document. Okay. We're doing a letter half, but we also know, so width is going to be the same, 51p0. Our height is going to be 33p0. And orientation, we may have to change this, but orientation is going to be landscape. No, wait, sorry, letter. Now I just changed that. I was wrong. Okay, I think it'll snow. Now it's wanting to switch. It may have wanted to switch anyway. Well, maybe it defaults to that. Let me see what it's doing. 3p0. I want to make sure. Yeah, it looks like it's okay. So File, New Document. It does work okay. So width 51p0, height 33p0, and it will default to that landscape or wide orientation. And be sure that facing pages is unchecked. It probably won't be checked. We aren't page numbering, so that's not important. The columns, you can do the up arrow until you see a 3, or you can type in a 3. So we're going to do a 3-column document. And then margins are going to be equal all the way around. And I think it remembered for me anyway, that 6p0 for bottom. If I just click the link, it made them all 3p0. So I could type in a 3p0 or click the link, either way. There's no bleed, no slug, so we don't need to set that. And then go ahead and create your document, and it should look something similar to that. Is that correct? Okay, and let's go ahead before we do anything and save this as, and we'll just go ahead and put it in Chapter 2. So File, Save As, and call it Chapter 2 and then underscore P38. So that's our page 38. At least we know which one it's different from our practice. Say okay to that. And then you're ready to go. Any questions on it?
Could you show me, I was slow following you because I had to get caught up, but could you show me the, how to do the columns again?
Yeah, mine didn't give me an option.
For columns, so do you have the document itself, the wide orientation document, but without the columns? So there's two things we can do. I could go to layout. So if I have the document, but I don't have columns, and I'll start back through the whole thing just so you, and those of you that are ready to go ahead and work, okay? So I can go to layout, margins and columns, and just simply put a 3.
Okay.
And then that works. If you need to actually go back through the document setup, I can go back to File, New, Document, and it's 51p0 wide by 33p0 high. It automatically adjusts to that wide orientation. 3 columns, my margins are 3p0 all the way around, and then create.
It doesn't have a column.
Here?
Yeah.
And in design?
Yeah.
Well, that's weird. Oh, you're in Adobe Illustrator. So, yeah, you want to get in InDesign. Yep. Okay. Yep, you should be okay there. There you go. Yep, ready to go. Okay, I'll stop my recording.